Hello and welcome to SquishiVision, where I'm about to give my thoughts on Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, which I went to go see yesterday evening. I was going to react to it yesterday night, and then I said I fell asleep on my floor like the dysfunctional, depressed person that I am. So this is my my semi-immediate reaction, having watched it about 14 hours ago, but being asleep for about 12 of those hours. Not seen it more than once. I've obviously not had a chance to script through it because it's a cinema release. I've had a couple of reviews, so this is my immediate reaction. I just said about. So this is my kind of inherent thoughts. You know, I've not had a chance to kind of think about it too much. I'm just gonna actually bring up my Letterboxd review because I'll use that as notes, and I should have brought it up before I started streaming, but I forgot. So you're not my real boss. What are you gonna do about it? Yeah, you wanna go? Just give me a second to come up and Letterboxd load. But I mean, straight from the top, I enjoyed it. I felt it was a very it has Guardians of the Galaxy level originality to it in terms of stylistic choice. Like, okay, basically, if you're going to write a essay, such as if you, for example, you were studying a master's degree of film theory and practice and you got to university like I did, on a director's stylistic language, and you chose Sam Raimi, you would be very, what's the thing? You'd be wise not to include this as one of the case studies for it, because this is a Raimi's film through and through. And essentially every opportunity, it's a Raimi's film, but it's also an MCU film, but every opportunity Raimi has to kind of put into the film a stylistic choice that, you might hear my kitten wandering around if you hear random noises, that's my kitten being a kitten. Every opportunity Raimi has to basically input something which is his kind of signature aesthetic into the film, he does, and in that way it kind of doesn't really, it feels like an MCU film, but it also feels like clearly they've let someone come in and put their own kind of style into it. So, you know, jump scares, some legit, some humorous, yep, that's in it. Point of view shots, yep, that's in it. Candid shots are in it. Weird camera effects like distortion, smash zooms, that's in it as well. Characters looking straight at the lens, that's in it. And Bruce Campbell being Bruce Campbell is in it, and that's like, these are all Raimi-isms through and through. So yeah, and I mean, I'm not extraordinarily familiar with Sam Raimi's work. In fact, I think actually the only Sam Raimi films I've ever seen are Spider-Man, and I know that's like just a chapter in his kind of very distinct, well-known stylistic choices. Like, you know, I don't think, you know, I'm not claiming to be an expert in Sam Raimi, and I don't think you can be unless you've seen like the Evil Dead series, which is what he's kind of also famous for. But you know, still, the Spider-Man films are quite a distinct. If you watch some of the Spider-Man films, you still, I feel like I still know, I can still then recognize the Sam Raimi-isms, and I did. That would be it's a much more interesting film to watch, because I'm not one of those people who criticize the kind of cookie-cutter formula of Marvel. I don't really mind. I enjoy them. I still think they do new things, and I don't mind the things they do which aren't new. I mean, you know, we can go into a tiny bit about the commercialization and the product formularization of films, but regardless, even as someone who doesn't particularly mind that, I still kind of get a joy of watching a Marvel film when they do something completely new. I think it may be the case to any film or any kind of franchise, but like the way that they kind of lean into that quite heavily and like make it very cheesy, but without kind of removing any of the darkness. Like, you know, the film's pretty dark. Spoilers, by the way, in case that wasn't clear. They give me spoilers in this. There always are in my videos. They full on make Scarlet Witch a villain, and she is I'll talk about it a bit later, but you know, she's a formidable villain, and that kind of comes through. There's a lot of kind of pathos scenes with Benedict Cumberbatch's Doctor Strange about loneliness, and that all comes through. There's parts where I generally almost like welled up. these all came through. We got even with the fact that it leaned on a lot of a cheesiness and self-awareness of what was going on. Plot-wise, it didn't go how I expected it to, and that's kind of a good thing. I mean, one, it kept me invested because I wasn't like predicting what was going to happen. I didn't expect him to make Scarlet Witch an antagonist so quickly, like pretty much in her first scene. And also in a quite clumsy and out of character fashion. Like I know she justifies by saying she's not a great liar. Except she kind of spent what, an entire season deceiving people, and her kind of whole thing is tricking people. So actually, I mean, and also she was technically trained as a spy. I mean, we don't get to see her doing spy work, but it was that line that implies that she spent some time, you know, basically going under, not like practicing going undercover, at least, not if, even if she wasn't deployed undercover. So it's a bit odd for her to be like, oh, you know, the hex was easy, the lying is the hard part. I'm like, well, no, you kind of are a pretty decent liar. And also the whole thing of, oh, you didn't tell me their name, trope is such a like malaligned, overdone trope. I was very surprised that it was actually in this film. Oops, my arm went into some mirror dimension. Sorry, the problem of doing these streams before, well, around noon is that I can't balance my green screen enough, so I have to like crop up part of my image. So yeah, it was really a clumsy kind of way to reveal that she was behind things, and it kind of would have made a bit more sense if Doctor Strange already suspected that she may have been, considering how easy it was for him to kind of realize it after the fact. Before he went on and he kind of tricked into revealing that, and that would have been interesting. That would be a really interesting twist, because like I said, I was expecting her to be made into the antagonistic force so quickly. Well, sorry, my brain kind of had a crash moment there. And like, you know, even like, I think they wanted Strange to not realize that, so that he'd have a chance to kind of reveal where Chavez was being hidden, which also seems very kind of out of character for someone who's meant to be as clever as him. I mean, I guess it's his arrogance, but even then, and there's also, you know, there's many ways where they could have got him to kind of, she could have figured out where she was kept, without him having to reveal it, and you know, that being kind of pointed out later on. But yeah, I didn't expect to make her so easy, a villain so easy, and also considering her entire kind of time in the MCU has kind of been her tragic hero. Even after WandaVision established kind of her fragility, and even after WandaVision established that she was prepared to cross some lines and that she could be the monster, it did still make her kind of leap into being a mass murdering villain, like, you know, a bit of a jump. I mean, maybe I'll come around to this, maybe I'll be like, oh, actually, I mean, I know in the comics, it's kind of, it's her journey kind of ends the same way, where enough trauma happens and she kind of has cracks, and I know that can happen quite suddenly to people, in real life anyway, and especially someone who's like as powerful as her, that can have kind of devastating consequences, but, you know, realistically, it works, as I'm saying. Realistically, I can imagine someone having this kind of this very quick traumatic switch, but narratively, from a character perspective, I have to like author wise, you know, from a Doyleistic point of view, you're kind of establishing the characters, how the character kind of faces different issues. It seems a bit of a step back, actually, because really, she was already prepared at the end of WandaVision to sacrifice her kids and let Vision die, to let the village, let Westview have its freedom back. I mean, that was essentially her full miniseries arc, and so it kind of does it here, which is like, oh, I'm prepared to go to these lengths to get my kids back. Actually, no, wait, I was wrong. I'm gonna let this go. It kind of seems like a retread of her arc in some ways, which is strange because I've seen some quotes from Olsen where she says, I asked them to change certain things, so I wasn't retreading my arc so much, but then kind of like in the large scheme of things, she does. So it is basically and like, you know, when, like I said, at the end, she kind of whiplashes back to where she was in the first place. I mean, I get the Darkhold, they can explain it as a Darkhold being a corruptive presence, but still, from a dualistic point of view, it was still kind of jarring. That being my said, she's also a really great villain and one of the most frightening ones in the entire MCU. I mean, I don't know if she's particularly one of the most compelling ones. I mean, her motivation of basically wanting to be a mother is, you know, verbal to kind of just like mass control, but I don't think it's particularly. It's not a bad motivation. It's not that compared to like compared to what we describe as like the compelling villains of the MCU. I don't think it's quite up to that point. It's close, it's not quite there. But kind of just from like pure intensity, she's one of the most compelling, well, it's one of the most frightening villains. Like to the point where I don't really care that they kind of had, in fact, I'm glad I made her villain so early because we've got to have much more of her in the film as being just a pure antagonistic force. And it's yeah, I think it was much more scary because we've seen her as a hero and we've kind of cheered her along as a hero to kind of use her powers and be very, very powerful. And then when she actually becomes a villain, it's like, oh crap, all of that kind of intensity, all of that kind of strength is now being used against us, and we just see how devastating it really is. And, you know, I find the fact that the film actually ends on trying to convince us that she's dead is insulting, because I think it's pretty unlikely this is how they're going to end her character. I don't think anyone's going to... I don't think anyone's, from one iota, thinking this is the last we're going to see of Olsen in the MCU, or even like the Scarlet Witch in the MCU. But it's pretty undignified way to kill the character if it was, so that's why I don't think it is. But I guess we'll see. This film is full of cameos and Easter eggs beyond the kind of Raimi-isms. And I imagine the more you watch this, the more you kind of spot detail. But there's a lot of kind of wish fulfillment that they are leaning into by using the multiversal trope. So John Krasinski as Mr. Fantastic is a long-lasting fan casting, and they're basically like, well, you know, we're going to have this character. It just lets them basically use that casting without committing to the casting, because I don't think they're actually going to end up using him as their actual Mr. Fantastic. They might do. This might show their willingness to do so, but it also means they can do things like this and, you know, not have to like commit to it. And we got Stewart to play a variant of Xavier that is not only based off his previous film portrayal, which I've only ever seen the first two X-Men, I still catch up, is also based off the 1997 animated series, which gave me extremely large chills, because I grew up on that cartoon, and if anything, I think that cartoon was probably outside of kind of the DC animated universe the most exposure I had with Marvel as a kid growing up. I think most of what I know about the comics comes from the 1997 animated X-Men series, so it was really like when I heard the X-Men theme play as you come on, I was like, that's great, I love it. That being said, the Illuminati were an interesting addition. Like, fan knowledge from what the Illuminati are and who makes up their ranks and their power, and also the way that the movie builds them up, establishes them to be quite a formidable foe. So when they all get defeated by Wanda, I felt it was a bit too easy. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying Wanda shouldn't have ultimately won. I'm not saying she should have, you know, struggled for a long period of time to win. I mean, from a dualistic point of view, again, this film isn't about Illuminati, it's about Wanda, and so you don't want to clog up screen time when it narratively isn't important. Ultimately, what's important is she wins, and what matters kind of emotionally is that she wins in a brutal and violent way. And the best way to kind of portray that, and the most efficient way to portray that, is quickly and violently. But even then, it kind of, we know Wanda's really powerful, but I think you can portray as being powerful without making the Illuminati. I don't know. I can't figure it out. I don't know. I'm not sure. This is a kind of part I'm not sure about. I felt like, you know, like, especially considering like Miss Fantastic, but again, I guess his power isn't, his strength really isn't his kind of physical ability to fight, it's kind of his brain power to fight, but then it kind of seems odd that he would be the first one to attack then. I think the one that bothers me the most is Professor X getting killed. I think I would have had him survive, just be like really heavily injured or in a coma, but he's like, for me, as him being one of the most powerful kind of superheroes, but being a disabled man is how I always really liked. And the fact that, you know, it's his kind of, he's this really powerful hero, but he doesn't do much of the kind of field work because he knows how powerful he is, and he knows he's better kind of stepping back and being at the last force of defense because his mental powers are kind of off the charts. So I know I feel like having her win is consistent with the character from how I feel about him, but having her kill him is kind of not so much. But that's just me emotionally, I think. And then even Captain Marvel is established to be like on par with Wanda in terms of their ability to VV Thanos. So yeah. Also, I'm uncomfortable with how much they're leaning into calling the MCU 616. Like that's the comic book world, Prime Universe in the comics 616. And according to multiversal kind of theory, both the MCU and the comics exist in the same multiverse, but just different iterations. I know that it's unlikely. Well, no, actually, it's unlikely that comic book characters are going to cross over into the films, but the film characters could easily cross over into the comics. And then if they go both 616, my headcanon is that you've got you're gonna have two numbering systems, one which is the film, and one which is, and like you've got like these like the comic books and the films are like two different branches, two different like main branches, and they're gonna have their own branches, and then they all root back at one thing, but they're not like they're like parallel branches essentially, and then that so you can have like a prefix where you're like movie 616 and comic book 616. That's how it works. But also like it's already established that the MCU is 19999 or something like that. I don't know. Can't remember off the top of my head. Maybe the surprise of this film is actually how relatively low impact it seems to be on the MCU from the multiverse perspective as a whole. I assumed this was going to be a combination of kind of the multiverse quadrilogy, where you had WandaVision, Loki. Well, WandaVision actually, in hindsight, wasn't really much of a multiverse film. It was more of establishing Wanda's motives, but actually it doesn't have anything to do with the multiverse apart from like right at the end. So we can from a Loki, Spider-Man, and Doctor Strange as a trilogy around the multiverse. I expect this to be a combination, and I don't mean it has to like strongly build upon things that happen in there. It doesn't have to like bring back in Kang and Loki and refer a lot to Spider-Man. But I did kind of feel like it was resolved quite neatly, and maybe this will be like proven wrong in the future. But to me, it just seemed like we didn't really get the hype that I felt was being deliberately built up in terms of this film being a combination of multiversal build-up. I expected there to be like more changes, but there wasn't really changes. It was more kind of what we already knew, like WandaVision and Loki and Spider-Man already established kind of the variant principle, where every portrayal of a character is just a variant of the same character, and then these variants could be people who look completely different or have like similar physical appearances. But that's already been established, and the film just basically continued on that line. I didn't actually reveal anything new that we didn't already know about the multiverse. Maybe that was the point. Maybe it was always the point of the previous things we're going to establish the rules of the multiverse so this film could play in it. I just expected it to be for a film that actually was the only one that had multiverse in the title to actually do a bit more with the multiverse. And I think I've seen someone link a Letterboxd comment that the film shows like the three most boring multiversal planes to go to. And I'm like, well, actually, yeah, that's true. We could have even explored other things, but they didn't, I guess. And I guess we've got Quantumania coming along, which I guess also explores the multiverse because Kang is in it, I guess. So maybe there is still more to come. I expected there to be just a tiny bit more in this than there was, if that makes sense. But I don't know. But hey, despite those three things, it was a fun film. I laughed a lot. I got somewhat spooked a lot. I mean, from a jump scare perspective, this isn't like massively like horror. I think it's a nice kind of, and that's good. Like, look, I like horror aesthetically and from an interest, but I don't like watching it because I'm just a coward. I don't like being on my edge. I don't like the feeling of being on my edge. People that like that kind of feeling of being on the edge. I don't like being on the edge, so I like the tropes of horror, and I like the kind of certain aspects of horror. I still like jump scares. So a lot of jump scares in this film are actually kind of light, which I appreciate it. It meant I could still enjoy the film and not like be on the edge, but like enjoy the other horror elements at level, which was comfortable to me. I think MCU is a good place to do that in, because you don't really come into expecting a full-on horror film. I think it's like only there was one moment where I had to cover my. There was two parts. One part where I had to cover my eyes, and that was when Wanda suddenly appeared off the side. I knew the jump scares were coming because I looked them up in a spoiler-free jump scare guide, which I'm glad exists, because it's like it lets me kind of have a warning without spoiling any of the plot for me. And the part where I kind of looked away from was when which I need to watch back because apparently it has like a lot of visual interest in it. But the part where Wanda basically kills Professor X, and people are disagreeing whether or not she snaps his neck or rips his head apart, and I don't know because I looked away at that moment in time. So I guess I'm gonna have to give it a look now. But yeah, I definitely enjoyed it. I think Marvel, you know, should be commended for like not needing to be hesitant anymore and kind of embracing the complete kind of tone of comic books, that they can be serious but also quite cheesy, and they can also be kind of inconsistent in themselves but still be true to their core. And I guess that gives lessons to hook a lot of things. So those are my thoughts about WandaVision, about Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Can't actually remember the next it'll be Thor Love and Thunder, which is going to be a very tech-heavy film, so I'm looking forward to that. So those are my thoughts on the film. Let me know in the comments below what you thought, and also I was going to say, because nothing really much for me to look forward to for a while actually, now that a lot of my shows are finished, but I think 27th of May is Obi-Wan, so I guess in a couple of weeks time, so I get some time off. But also I think, just a round tangent, because I watched the last episode of Picard late, as in like a couple of days ago, and then I went to see this, so seeing like Patrick Stewart in like two of his most iconic roles, playing age versions of two of his most iconic roles a couple of days apart, was just like a really weird experience, especially because like in the film, when he goes into his mind, he becomes he's able to like walk around and do things when we see that kind of mind battle, and he's dressed in a way not dissimilar to how Picard dresses in Star Trek Picard. I was like, what show am I watching right now? I'm Harris, let me know what you think, and I will see you guys probably, oh, what's happening here? Yep, I was pressing the wrong thing. And I'll see you guys, I'll see you guys when I next see you. Bye.